Today's story begins with our main character, Yuen, an orphan living a normal life in a seemingly ordinary world. He spends his days playing games and going about his routine, completely unaware that his life is about to change forever. One day, without any warning, Yuen is suddenly teleported to another world, a magical world unlike anything he has ever known. However, upon arriving, he realizes he is extremely weak. In fact, he's so powerless that he is on the verge of dying right at the start of the story. Just when things seem hopeless, something extraordinary happens. Yuen accidentally summons a goddess who bestows him with divine powers. This moment marks the true beginning of his adventure. The story opens with Yuen traveling through an airport. Immersed in his music, with headphones on, he's completely unaware of the strange distortion appearing in the timeline. Suddenly, a portal opens in front of him. Lost in his music, Yuen walks straight into it, only to find himself in a completely different world. When he opens his eyes, a dragon rushes past him. Everything around him is bizarre, nothing like his high-tech airport back home. He notices girls flying through the air and fantastical creatures roaming about. Yuen quickly understands that he is no longer in his world. Driven by curiosity, he explores further and comes across a stone god, which is actually just a mystical stone. Two magicians appear and tell him that placing his hand on the stone will reveal the strength of his magical power. Excited, Yuen touches the stone. Suddenly it glows intensely, but to his disappointment, the magicians declare that he has no magic at all. His heart sinks when he asks why the stone lit up. One of the magicians explains that each color of the light corresponds to a different type of magic. In Yuen's case, only white light appeared, which represents no specific magical type. However, a second magician notices a faint green light alongside the white. She reveals that Yuen possesses wood magic, a rare power but currently extremely weak. No one in this world has ever had such a low-level wood magic before. Devastated, Yuen leaves, feeling useless. As he sits alone, an old man appears and reassures him. He explains that wood magic is incredibly valuable. It can even be used for farming and other unique purposes. Yuen just needs to focus on developing his power. Over the next few weeks, he trains diligently and his abilities grow to the point where he can make plants grow rapidly. One night, Yuen witnesses a terrifying scene near some bushes. Two boys are with a girl. One boy moves to kiss her neck, but the girl suddenly transforms into a vampire and drains his blood, killing him instantly. The second boy fights back using earth magic, summoning massive stones to attack, but the vampire girl conjures a wall of vines, destroying his rocks. She then captures him and drains his blood as well. Horrified, Yuen tries to escape, but the vampire girl notices him. She attacks, wrapping him in her magical vines. Just as Yuen is about to be killed, a light suddenly erupts from his body. A fairy girl appears in front of him. Yuen initially assumes she is his servant, but she shockingly reveals that she has come from hell to kill him. In fact, she was sent specifically to finish him off. However, Yuen had already been fatally wounded before her arrival. Seeing the danger, the fairy girl immediately cuts through the vampire's magical vines and pulls Yuen to safety. The vampire lurking inside her is enraged and starts attacking the fairy girl, declaring that Yuen is her prey and she will not let him go. But before she can land a decisive strike, the fairy girl defeats the vampire in a single, powerful attack. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a mysterious lady senses the surge of energy from the fight. Back at the scene, the fairy girl carefully extracts the energy that Yuen had previously lost to the vampire and returns it to his body. Yuan awakens, alive once again. He asks the fairy girl who she is and whether she will become his servant. But the fairy girl replies firmly, no. She asks if he remembers her, but Yuan admits he has never seen her before. She reveals that she saved him only to finish him off herself, launching another attack. When she slashes at Yuan with her sword, the attack accidentally grazes her own hand. Shocked, she asks how he is using magic, realizing he is far stronger than she thought. At that moment, the mysterious lady arrives, the same one who had sensed the energy, and introduces herself as the chairwoman of Soyu Academy. She warns the fairy girl that if she harms Yuan, she will feel the damage too, because Yuan is her Suna master. Yet the fairy girl refuses to back down and strikes again, sustaining even more injuries. Seeing the escalating danger, the chairwoman steps forward and hands Yuan a mysterious book, instructing him to place his hand on it and channel his energy. Yuan obeys, and suddenly his body seems to merge with the book itself. The fairy girl enters the book, and Yuan finally learns her name, Mofi. The chairwoman explains that the book will allow Yuan to summon fairies and learn more about them, including Mofi. However, there is a condition. Since she is the chairwoman, she wants Yuan to join Soyu Academy. In return, he will receive 3 more fairy seats, each with the chance of summoning fairies even more powerful than Mofi. Overjoyed, Yuan kneels in gratitude, promising to become the best student at the academy. That night, as he studies the book, it activates, revealing that it contains the past lives of fairies. He learns that fairies are not born naturally. They are reincarnations, and to truly master a fairy, Yuan must understand their past and befriend them in those memories. At this point, Yuan is still too weak to enter Mofi's past, so he postpones the task for 24 hours. The next day, he arrives at the academy, where other students glare at him, mocking his lack of power and calling him a failure. Suddenly, a student with ice magic throws a crystal at him, a trap. Yuan, unaware, touches the crystal, and a bright light merges with his wood magic, unlocking a second magical attribute, wind magic. This combination also activates his charm ability, causing him to lose conscious control of his body temporarily. With his new powers, Yuan scans his surroundings automatically and confidently approaches the academy's most beautiful girl using his best pickup line. Although she runs away embarrassed, the other students are left stunned by his newfound presence. Later, Yuan contacts the fairy through his phone, which is linked to the book. The fairy explains that the crystal's light merged with his wood magic, unlocking the wind attribute and activating his charm. Despite his confidence, Yuan soon faces his first real challenge, a duel match designed to enhance magical skills. The student who previously mocked him challenges him directly. As they face each other, a princess from another country watches the match, hoping to be impressed. The opponent uses his cold wind magic to attack, but Yuan is unfazed. When the opponent summons a powerful tornado, Mofi instructs Yuan that he can summon her to end the fight instantly, but Yuan insists on stopping it himself. Using his wood magic, Yuan activates his nature powers and destroys the tornado with a single move, but the immense energy expenditure knocks him unconscious. When he awakens, he finds himself in a village engulfed in flames. As he moves forward, a man grabs him, pleading for help. Yuan panics, but another man arrives and takes the first away. Hiding in fear, Yuan notices a small girl with a high fever. He places a damp cloth on her forehead, but she passes out. Yuan sees 2 boys trying to capture a little girl in exchange for gold coins. He immediately intervenes, but the boys attack him. In the struggle, Yuan shields the girl, taking blows meant for her, and is about to lose consciousness. Just as he is about to pass out, he sees Mofi in front of him. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself back in the magical world. The fairy from the book explains that Yuan has just returned from Mofi's memories. She tells him that if he truly wants to control a fairy or have them follow his orders, he must first befriend them by entering their past, a task that cannot be delayed. Yuan understands and promises to follow through. Later, he speaks to Mofi via his phone, reassuring her that he will never force her to do anything she doesn't want. Mofi compliments his words but admits she doesn't trust him. Suddenly, Yuan hears voices in the dorm. Two girls are whispering about whom to make their next meal. Yuan quickly realizes that they are vampires but chooses not to act, knowing that if he intervenes without summoning Mofi first, he could be killed. The girls start hunting on their own, but their plans are interrupted by the arrival of the Vampire King, who orders them to leave for another task. The next day, Yuan returns home, worried because the chairwoman is nowhere to be found. He fears he won't be able to warn her about the vampires, putting the students and himself in danger. While eating noodles, Yuan hears noises outside and steps out to find a girl. In a swift motion, he knocks her out with a punch. When he sees her face, he realizes she is the princess of the country. Unsure of why she is there, Yuan drags her inside to hide her from potential danger. With no space to sleep, he rests beside her. The next morning, the princess wakes and suspects Yuan, punching him in anger. Yuan apologizes and explains the misunderstanding. He makes her noodles, which she loves. Suddenly, there is a knock at the gate. Both Yuan and the princess sense vampires. A vampire girl breaks through the gate, but Yuan and the princess hide in separate rooms. A jar is about to fall, but Yuan catches it just in time. The vampire girl isn't alone. Another vampire is with her. They track human scents and move toward the room, breaking the door. Yuan and the princess escape into the forest. He instructs the princess to hide behind a tree, but before she can, the vampires arrive. At the perfect moment, Yuan summons Mofi. She attacks the vampires, keeping them at bay, and begins using a secret technique that takes time to activate. While she prepares, the vampires strike again, but Mofi unleashes hellfire, burning their bodies. When the vampires try to flee, they are trapped within an invisible barrier. Until the Vampire King arrives, the barrier shatters and the girls think they are safe, but the Vampire King eliminates them. Mofi and the Vampire King engage in a fierce battle. The fairy from the book informs Yuan that Mofi has reached level 8 and her power has increased. Yuan, however, is distracted. Mofi is struggling. He asks the book fairy if he can help. She says he can, but only if he enters Mofi's spiritual world. Yuan agrees, but she warns that he lacks enough spiritual energy to do so alone. There is no other option, as Mofi is struggling against the Vampire King. At that moment, the princess approaches Yuan, offering him spiritual energy. Yuan, surprised, promises to feed her noodles for an entire year in return. With her support, he enters Mofi's spiritual world. Meanwhile, the Vampire King continues to attack, and Mofi defends Yuan at every turn. Realizing she cannot win, Mofi decides to take a drastic measure. She stands her ground as the Vampire King strikes, letting the sword pass through her. Using her blood, she activates a special technique, trapping the Vampire King in chains of blood. The Vampire King was trapped within Mofi's blood chains and could not escape until she was defeated. Yuan, in the spiritual world, was desperate to help, but he couldn't intervene directly. Mofi's only goal was to protect Yuan with her life, holding the Vampire King at bay for as long as she could. Yuan, meanwhile, moved through the spiritual realm, thinking desperately about how to make himself visible to Mofi and communicate with her. At that moment, he sees the boy who had previously been manipulating Mofi. As Mofi leaves, Yuan shouts at him, but to his shock, the boy hears him. Furious, Yuan demands to know why he is trying to trap Mofi, sensing that the boy is up to no good. The boy introduces himself as Anyu, a name that is the reverse of Yuan's own. He coldly declares that Mofi is nothing more than a tool for him, a means to an end. Yuan argues that this is wrong, but Anu ignores him. The next day, Anu comes to see Mofi. When she hears him, she opens the gate, shoving him down and pressing her sword to his neck. She asks why he is there, and Anu claims he only brought food for her. In the struggle, the food falls to the ground. Mofi begins picking it up, but Anu tells her not to worry, he will bring more later, and then leaves. Yuen, still in the spiritual world, shouts repeatedly, trying to explain that Anu had only heard Mofi's side and doesn't understand the full truth. Later, Mofi and Anu ascend to the top of the town's tallest, safest tower. Anu explains that he is a traveler, wandering from town to town in search of treasure, but he stayed here because he admires Mofi and wants her to join him on his journey. Mofi hesitates, haunted by the fear of leaving behind her previous life, a life filled with killing. She worries that she may never be able to abandon her past completely. The next day, Mofi is seen returning after eliminating some thieves. On her way, she encounters Anu, and she instinctively hides her sword, fearing he might disapprove if he sees her armed. Anu explains that he had gone to fetch some food supplies, and he suggests they walk home together. Mofi hesitates, saying she will follow him shortly. She feels guilty for lying to him, but reluctantly agrees. When Mofi reaches her home, she is delighted to find that Anu has already prepared a meal for her. He tells her that the dish was taught to him by his mother. Mofi is genuinely happy, savoring the gesture. Meanwhile, Yuen watches from afar, frustrated and confused, unable to understand why Mofi is so easily deceived by Anu's lies. He can see that Anu is manipulating her, and every moment he feels helpless as she unknowingly trusts the wrong person.